Good evening. My name is Right Blend, and welcome to my Day 6 report of the trial of Pat King. Today we heard from Allison Yaskovic, who is a crime intelligence analyst supervisor at the Ottawa Police Service, and she is a civilian member of the service, and she has been on the stand for a number of days. Both the Crown and the defense have used Ms. Yaskovic as a witness to tender different videos that she either downloaded or would have some knowledge of, as in her role at the Ottawa Police Service. And as always, you need a witness to introduce evidence generally into the trial. As I understand, it could be definitely wrong on that, but I believe I'm correct. Now, it's also important noting that this afternoon I did an interview with Viva Fry to update him on how the trial of Pat King is progressing here in Ottawa. And at one point, Mr. Fry asked me about whether or not I knew who the judge of the trial was, and I told him I don't really pay attention to the Crown prosecutors or the judge so much. I paid a lot of attention to Justice Perkins McVeigh in the trial of Litch and Barber because I found her to be participating quite a lot. Whereas this judge in this trial is not as interventionist. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I think each has their strengths and weaknesses. But I'll learn it going forward, and I'll be able to report it to you in the future. But I'm more focused on how the trial is progressing. There's been no real decisions on any legal challenges made yet by the judge, but we'll of course have several of them later down the line, certain arguments to be made, and of course his final decision on whether Pat King is guilty or not, and the sentencing following that if there's a guilty verdict, so on and so forward. So definitely learning his name will be up there, but again, there's so many details to pay attention to that just didn't really cross my mind. But this is the 6th day of trial for Pat King. Now some people might call it the 7th. We had 2 sitting days this week and 4 sitting days last week. We were supposed to have 5 days starting last Monday, but we had to take 1 day off because defense attorney for Mr. Pat King, Natasha Calvino, that's a name I do know, had to call a day off, had to ask for an adjournment because she wasn't feeling well. So far in the trial, our first witness was, I believe, way back on Monday, Victoria Delarond, who testified also in the POEC, and she talked about her experiences as a blind person during the convoy and her relationship with Mr. Paul Champ. So we went over that, and then we had 3 other witnesses. Those 3 witnesses testified in the trial of Litch and Barber. Miss Delarond only testified in POEC, so the next 3 witnesses were Vivian Lear, Chantal Biro, and then Natalie Hanaud. Actually, I believe Natalie Hanaud was before Chantal Biro, and Natalie Hanaud of OC Transpo, whereas Vivian Lear and Chantal Biro I think they both worked downtown during the convoy, so they also testified in Litch v. Barber, in RV Litch and Barber, and this is RV King and Billings. And of course, you may know that George Tyson Billings, took a he pled guilty, so the rest of his charges were dropped. He pled guilty to 1 count, so he's no longer the co-accused of Mr. King, but at one point, when these charges were laid, he was the co-accused of Mr. Patrick King, so that's why on the case docket it has his name on it still. RV King and Billings is what it says. It's just like RV Litch and Barber. So R being the acronym for the monarch, the crown, the court, whatever you want to call it. So moving on, Next, Natalie Hanaud, interesting quick side note, I believe she was supposed to resume on the stand Wednesday, which was going to be today, but she didn't, and I don't think they dismissed her, so I think she's technically still on the stand, or maybe I missed something, I don't know, or maybe something was resolved in relating to her. But so today, back to today, day 6 of the trial. Today, again, in the morning, we heard from Miss Yaskovic again. The Crown finished their examination in chief of her. And then the defense, I think they might have done that yesterday, but the defense was tendering several videos through Miss Yaskovic today, so they were doing cross-examination, so it was defense cross. And we watched 12 defense videos, 2 of which I think were already included previously, but nonetheless, the videos, I believe, were showing different elements. They were showing a different side of things, where Mr. King is painted one way by the Crown. The defense is putting forward this evidence to show him in a different way as a balancing act, to show that there's more to it, showing the parts where he's calling for peace and safety and talking and trying to de-escalate situations and so forward. So we saw those videos. We also saw a couple of videos that weren't shot by Mr. King, and I think the purpose of those videos from the defense were to show what the area looked like at certain points in times. I believe we watched a February 17th video from War Campaign showing Bank Street and Wellington and different police barriers and stuff along the way, concrete barriers and intersections, police vehicles and intersections, and of course protest vehicles as well. And then we saw another video, I believe, filmed by Jim Kerr of the Church of Bubbles. Two videos from him, I believe, the defense tendered. One of them was him, I believe, on the 8th or something earlier on in the convoy, where Mr. King is talking to police in the distance, and there was a back and forth between the defense and the witness, Miss Yaskovic, about whether they could identify the police officers, and Miss Yaskovic was having some issues identifying the shoulder flash of the video because it was a bit further away. And at one point in the video, Jim Kerr, Mr. Bubble Bus, tries to go in and record the conversation, and somebody asks him to step away. And then in another video, Pat King was talking directly to Jim Kerr about the convoy, about that there's nobody coming down. I think Jim Kerr was talking about an impending sense of doom, and basically Pat said, that's all anyone's ever felt for the last couple of years. It's been cases, blah blah blah, right? So and he was kind of seeming like a little bit of a calming voice there, and he said a lot of other things, but if you want the details, again, as always, go to my X, follow that right blend, and you can see the details as they're happening in the courtroom. So that was most of the morning, and we proceeded a little bit. Now the defense did finish. They asked a couple of clarifying questions of Ms. Yaskovic about because during the lunch break the parties worked together. As you may recall in my previous summaries, I mentioned how the Crown was particularly interested in the social media reactions of Mr. King's videos. Ms. Yaskowic's role as a crime intelligence analyst at the time, now a supervisor in that unit, was to go and download videos, make summaries of them, take verbatim quotes, and she cataloged things like how many views they had at the time, what date they were posted, how many reactions, how many shares. And she at one point explained to the court what a reaction is. On Facebook, you can like something, you can wow it, you can hate it, you can laugh at it, you can do different things, you can care about it. And I think there's 7 in total. So the Crown highlights that for every video that they tendered through Ms. Yaskovic, which is just, videos of walking around. It's Pat King's social media videos where he's talking about different things at different points during convoy, leading before convoy, some during, some just about at the end, kind of painting the Crown's picture. But again, the judge actually said at one point during all these videos, what is this going to? The judge has said that numerous times to both the Crown and the defense, where the judge is making a comment basically that he doesn't understand where the Crown is going with a piece of video that's being offered to the court as evidence. What charge is it going towards? He said that to defense as well. He said that to the defense today. He said, normally when there's a piece of evidence, he has an idea of what count or what charge it's going towards. But he says that this is the first trial that he thinks where he's seeing a lot of evidence that he doesn't really have any idea to which count the evidence goes towards, proving or disproving. And he said this both to the Crown the other day and to the defense today, and as well the defense the other day. I believe the defense began their cross of Ms. Yaskovic on day 5, which was this Tuesday. The first day of this week, Monday, was a holiday. Now we will be sitting until Friday, and then after Friday, we are going on a few week break, at least maybe a couple months, I believe until July, when Pat King will return. And around that time, I think in August, Litch and Barber will return to their trial. So I don't know. I'll get the exact dates. Don't quote me on those, but there's going to be a break after this Friday for Mr. King concerning his trial. So the judge makes that comment, saying doesn't know what evidence, which charges the pieces of evidence are going to prove or disprove, and that Ms. Calvino said that she will offer statements and submissions at the end to explain which goes to which. And the judge said he looks very much forward to that. And I think also this came up yesterday, a similar comment from the judge, and Ms. Calvino, the defense lawyer for Pat King, rose to say that, in an example video, that it goes to the 4 corners of the charge, that it goes to paint a certain picture of Mr. King, that he was focused on peace, and so on and so forward, different things. So we'll see towards the end what submissions Ms. Calvino makes and what impact that has on the judge and his considerations for focusing his his thinking on in these large pieces of evidence, these huge videos. You can imagine the convoy has so many different things happening, so many people involved, a long period of time really to be talking about with an enormous amount of information. So both parties, the Crown and the defense, are trying to get these things in to go towards their clients, whatever. And there's just such a big piece of information. It's not like everything you put to the court is going to be obvious when you have, Pat King walking down the street talking about whatever, and he's showing some stuff, and some stuff is happening. It's not clear what that goes to all the time, and that's a lot of the videos that we're watching are like that. Or Pat King sitting in a room talking about something. What does this have to do with anything? Pat King giving an interview to somebody or talking to people about things. How does that go to mischief? How does that go to counseling? The submissions are going to really be where the focus comes in. And the judge said, it's okay to tell me what you want me focusing on in this for the consideration, because it's a little bit unclear. So we'll see how that develops as it goes. The defense raising that it goes to the charges and to painting a fair picture of Mr. King, I think, is more or less what they're getting at. So on the clarifying questions, again, I talk about how the Crown fight. We're circling back. I know this was a big kind of off the pathway rant, but now we're back on route. And where I left off before I went on that tangent was the Crown focusing on the social media reactions of every video. Because basically they show a video and they'd ask the witness, when was it posted, how many likes did it have, how many shares, how many comments, how many views, and then we'd go to the next video and so on and so forth. And so over the lunch break, the witness actually, and the Crown, I understand, maybe just the witness, but definitely the witness, and the Crown, and maybe the Crown and the defense worked together on producing a list of, for the 12 defense videos, how many reactions each of them had, and they broke down the reactions a bit. How many likes, how many shares, how many comments, how many reactions, how many likes, how many wows, how many cares, how many hates, how many surprised or shocked or whatever. And I guess the defense, their point in this exercise is, in my opinion, to show that not everybody commenting or viewing the video or liking the video or leaving a reaction on Facebook on the video, because the majority of this is from the Real Pat King Facebook page, are in support of Mr. King. Because it kind of comes across like that's the point the Crown is trying to make, that everyone there is influenced by Mr. King, that he's got this huge influence, and all the people there are in support of what he's saying. And I guess that's kind of the assumption, I think, being made when the Crown raises these different social media variables. So the defense comes in and says, well, here's the breakdown of those. And actually, I believe on cross-examination yesterday, when it began with Ms. Yaskovic, the defense asked her about she didn't go through the comments, all of them, or the reactions, so she doesn't know where people are commenting from. It could be Russia, could be China. Doesn't know if they're commenting in support or against it, the Pat King's videos on Facebook, or whether they're leaving, angry reacts, whatever. So they did break down that for these 12 defense videos, and I think the Crown actually was interested in that as well. So we did end, and the Crown had no re-examination for Miss Yaskovic, so that was good. And we began with the next Crown witness. So we had Miss Delaronde, Miss Vivian Lear, Miss Natalie Hanot, Miss Chantal Biro, then Miss Allison Yaskovic, and then now I believe we are at Mr. A familiar face who also testified at Litch Barber, Sergeant Jordan Blondie, Blondee. He was a PLT officer at the time of the protest. Yes, we're back into the PLTs, guys. I know you're super excited about that. And we heard about the infamous PLT logs, the PLT chats, all that good stuff. So the Crown began their chief examination of their next Crown witness, Mr. Blondie, and he testified about his role in brief during the Freedom Convoy as a PLT officer, making connections with different stakeholders. That is, anyone within, as he said, anybody with any skin in the game, whether they are benefiting or having a deficit or a loss or do not like the convoy. They're a stakeholder, they're a party. So it could be an aggrieved resident, could be somebody in a truck, could be a ground protester. And he testified about different days, observations he made, traffic conditions on which streets, testifying things like Kent was blocked on this day. I think it was, I don't remember exactly which day of February that was, maybe January 30th, from the 417 to Wellington Street. There were this many trucks with trailers on such a street, this many trucks without trailers, big, rigs capable of holding a tractor, not a pickup truck, this many passenger vehicles, this many vehicles with campers, so on. There was this many lanes blocked of this street with one emergency lane open. So he gave testimony to that effect. He also talked about the, I believe, February 3rd Confederation Park incident with the permanent structure that was erected, the cook shed that we've heard about. And he talked about how the PLT went there to basically tell them that they had to move it, and it did eventually get moved. He talked about attending I forget the official name, but the baseball stadium on Coventry, RGC Park, I believe, something like that, where the logistics camp, as he described it, where he said that on one occasion he was sent there to ask people to leave, just to leave, and that some people did leave, like a person in their group did leave, but another person who he also had contact with at the Confederation Park incident, so this is days later he's talking about, I think this would be February 10th or something, did not leave at all and was not amicable, and as he would describe, some people were downright obstinate. I'm going to go with that to his request. They were very non-agreeable to what he was asking them to do. So that's where we're at right now, and Mr. Blonde's testimony will continue. I believe we've gotten as far as February 14th or maybe February 12th in his testimony. So tomorrow the Crown will continue their examination in chief of Mr. Blonde, and then there will be cross-examination by Natasha Calvino for Mr. King, and we'll see maybe if we get to know what happened to Natalie Hanaud. Maybe I missed it. From OC Transpo, she's going to come back, and how many more witnesses after this particular one until we get to the defense's case, when the Crown said yes last week, you might recall, that they are confident they can rest their case this week. Even if things proceed slowly, they think that they can finish, and the defense should be able to begin their case late this week. And the judge made a comment last week that it's very important that both parties finish their case and closing statements by the end of the third week, which I believe will be the week that we have in July. So the judge wants things moving along well, and I think they are moving along pretty well. So again, police testimony, I find from my limited experience in trials, tends to be very cut and dry, very matter of fact, very day by day. As Mr. Blonde is testifying, Officer Blonde, Sergeant Blondie is testifying that what happened on what day, what he see at what time, and who was there, the 5 W's really. And he testified quite a lot of his contacts he's testifying about seemed to be about the parking lot at the southeast corner of Queen and Kent Street, where he's testifying about the various days and how things are progressing over there. And I think one of the last things we left off with today before we adjourned until tomorrow morning was Officer Blonde was talking about how he was asked to attend with security to security handed out a trespassing notice after days of the arrangement that they had. They said basically at one point, the parking lot, that the people could stay there as long as they stayed to one corner, but I guess it progressed to a point where they did want to serve them a trespassing notice, and he did attend with that. He also testified that the tenant of TLT, the police liaison team, is that they don't do enforcement. They can't work both sides of the fence at the same time. It wouldn't work for the program. So he never charged anyone or anything like that. He did communicate messages from both. He saw himself as a conduit of communication, so he communicated messages from his chain of command to protesters and from protesters to his chain of command, so on and so forth. So we'll get to more stuff tomorrow. There was also talk of the moving day, where he said he was a secondary contact for another person. I think I have an idea of who he was talking about, not Patrick King, during the Freedom Convoy, trying to move trucks on moving day, but they couldn't do it, and the judge later asked why they couldn't do it just before we adjourned. And then Officer Blondie testified that they couldn't do it because they did not have permission from someone up the chain of command, whether that was senior officers or who knows, he doesn't know, so he couldn't answer that. And so that's an interesting point the judge was paying attention to when Officer Blondie was talking about moving day, how there was somebody trying to move trucks from, I assume, the convoy, secondary contact of this PLT officer, Mr. Sergeant Blondie, and they couldn't do it after a certain point, and that there was a script for moving people. And also Officer Blondie testified a little bit about the difficulties they were having with the infamous corner at Rideau and Sussex, the PLT team, when trying to do messaging there and so forward. I'm sure we'll hear more about that tomorrow. Until then, I'm Right Blend. Follow all the social media, like and comment on the video. It really helps to get out, and subscribe. I'll see you soon, and when this is all over, we'll start talking about whatever's going on in Canada that matters. I'll see you soon.